Tonight, the quiet streets of Tasmania. Our towns and cities shut down as hospitality restrictions come into force. The fallout for local workers, federal hotel staff stood down, and we're learning about more job losses tonight. Tasmanian schools remaining open, but the new advice if your kids don't attend. And our top athletes put Olympic dreams on hold as the AFL prepares a restructure.
Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Peter Murphy begins now.
Good evening, welcome to this special late edition of Nightly News on an historic day of business shutdowns as the state and the country come to terms with the coronavirus situation. To hospitality in a moment, but first straight to Michelle Wisby for some breaking news. Michelle, yet more cases in our state tonight.
That's right, Pete. Only minutes ago we heard 6 more cases of coronavirus have been confirmed in Tasmania, bringing the state's total to 28. 5 of those people were on board cruise ships and the other one has recently returned from overseas. The good news, this means we still haven't seen any confirmed community transmissions of the disease in Tasmania yet.
Hospitality shutdown that's come into effect. What impacts have we seen this evening so far?
Pete, it's only our first night with these new rules and already there's a noticeable difference. It's extremely quiet in these traditionally busy hotspots and the streets are almost empty. We've spoken to a lot of business owners today and they're unsure how they'll survive the next few months and are now having to undertake the devastating task of letting their staff go. The Premier sent out this address earlier today explaining the decision and why, no matter how hard it is, we all need to follow the rules.
I know this decision is going to hurt many people, as well as businesses large and small and their employees. For that I'm truly sorry. But if we can limit the spread of this virus, it will save lives.
Now businesses are pleading for everyone's support. Many are still open for takeaway orders. Pete, the entire community now needs to work together to get through this extraordinary moment in history.
Yes, it's quite strange. And Michelle, thanks for staying late and updating us on all the action that's happening, or the lack of action as we can see it now. Well, pubs and casinos have fallen silent as Tasmania's economy enters uncharted waters brought on by the virus crisis. By midday, the cafes and restaurants were turning away customers, except those ordering takeaway. But the biggest shock was delivered to 1,500 federal group workers.
A decision so awful there was only one way to describe it.
It's absolutely devastating. I can't express the feeling in the room last night when we discovered what we would need to do.
1,500 federal group workers now out of work, stood down as the Commonwealth shuts down pubs, casinos, gyms, cinemas and places of worship. The federal group announcement sent shockwaves across its vast network of Tasmanian venues. 400 staff will remain on. The company still has hope for those it's let go.
Hopefully when this crisis is over and we can focus on recovery and rebuilding, those people are going to be part of our future.
At Invermay, Gary Whitney poured his final beer at 2 minutes to midday.
I'm not going to stay upstairs and cry about it. I'll just get on with my life, but yeah, we don't know. I don't know.
The future is now uncertain, but the strength of this community sure isn't.
We're a good sociable mob, yeah. There's no hassles, put it that way.
My favourite thing about the Park Hotel is the people. People are proud to be Swamp people. They're proud that this is their area. They love it.
Still smiling as he made the toughest last call of his 30-year career.
She's all over. All over.
The Tower Cafe is also looking to stay afloat through takeaways, or until they're forced to shut shop entirely.
Until then, it's business as usual. Come in for coffee. We're more than happy. With a big smile, we'll make your coffee.
It's not all about money.
These are places where people they've laughed, they've cried, they've shared stories with other people, they've met people, relationships are developed in these kind of places.
Room for a Pony in North Hobart employs nearly 20 casuals. The boss is trying to save their jobs and his.
It all depends on what the government handouts and how quickly they come and how actually useful they are. I know a lot of things have been announced. We've looked into a few of them, but there's still not a lot of information.
Not much to do now but pack away the signs of very nervous times. Sean McComish, 7 Tasmania News.
Well, this is the first night with those restrictions in place, and earlier this evening I spoke with Will Priestley, a prominent hospitality figure, about the impacts of the new restrictions. Well, thanks for joining us tonight, Will. It's been a very testing day for everybody. What's it like on the streets around you tonight?
Yeah, it's desolate. I think everybody's self-isolating, which is good.
Well, the restrictions came in at midday for a lot of the industry. It's affecting the industry in a big way. But what about in your business and your workers? What's happened with you today?
Today's by far the saddest day we've ever had in business. We had to let 75 workers go from our hospitality group.
That's certainly going to affect a lot of families, and particularly some of the young casuals that work in your sector. It's a very trying time for everybody. And how are we going to survive over the next few months? Because there's a lot of fogginess in front of us at the moment. And how can we help?
I mean, how can you help? Definitely support local. Now's the time to go out to the small restaurants, grab your takeaway, you know. If you don't feel like cooking the beans you've stored, you know, head out and really try and support the small shops. I think it's going to be really hard. I hope the government can give us a bit more clarity on what the benefits for our staff and our businesses.
Yes, well, the stimulus packages are still being worked out, and how they're going to be implemented is also something that we need to work out in the short term. Let's hope we can have some localised people visiting you just to keep things ticking over for you in the short term as well, Will.
Absolutely, that's the most we can hope for.
Yes, Will Priestley there from the Pilgrim Group after a very harrowing day for him and his staff, and of course the future's still uncertain. Well, the Premier has labelled the coronavirus crisis a war Tasmanians must fight together, saying working as one is the only way we'll make it through the battle that's facing us all. The Medical Association is now calling for hotel rooms to be opened up for those fighting the disease.
A strong message from the Premier.
We are at war against an insidious disease, and we must bring the weapons that we have to fight it. This weapon is social distancing. This is not a training drill. This is real. We expect all Tasmanians to play their part.
Followed by a blunt warning in the wake of the unprecedented hospitality shutdown.
Do not gravitate to holding parties in backyards or in other facilities.
Aged care homes going in to lockdown, most visits cancelled, and for those offering essential care and support,
visits will be restricted to less than 2 hours and no more than 2 persons together, and no one under 16 can visit except friend of life support to say goodbye.
The University of Tasmania already offering up its Fountainside Apartments student accommodation to help those needing to isolate. The Medical Association calling for more hotels to follow.
We can give patients, irrespective of their disease severity, the right care at the right time in the right place. Tasmanians do have an opportunity right now to not only flatten this epidemic curve, but to crush it.
In our hospitals, nurses have warned their protective gear is being rationed, running dangerously low.
It's absolutely critical that they have access to personal protective equipment so that they can remain safe and remain in the workforce and treating patients who present.
Michelle Wisby, 7 Tasmania News.
Long queues and surging online demand from those made jobless by this crisis has pushed Centrelink into meltdown. For more, we're joined now by reporter Sean McComish. Thanks, Sean, for joining us. What went wrong today?
Well, Pete, at this stage the answer seems to be fairly simple: overwhelming demand. There were a handful of people outside Centrelink offices in Launceston and Hobart, but the mainland was a completely different story. In Melbourne, there were long lines stretching far beyond the front door. People from all industries, all walks of life, now in need of COVID-19 relief payments. The Commonwealth urged people to head online. That was until the MyGov website crashed. The minister initially blamed it on a cyber attack, then later admitted there was no attack. The website simply couldn't cope with the demand. The minister is adamant it'll be fixed by tomorrow. Meanwhile, the City of Hobart has tonight announced a suite of support measures. It includes rent relief for tenants in council-owned buildings and allowing rates to be postponed for those experiencing hardship. That announcement has coincided with a push by the state's Property Council for a rates holiday. We're yet to see how the other councils will act. Pete?
Well, there's plenty of news to come on that front. Thanks very much. Sean McComish joining us there. Tasmania's schools will remain open to all students despite rising pressure for a statewide shutdown. Health authorities say there is no reason to close school doors amid widespread community concern for the safety of children and the community.
Classrooms staying open for now. Despite growing concerns, the Premier is keeping Tasmania's schools up and running, and he has the backing of health authorities.
Schools should remain open, given the importance of children getting an education and remaining part of a really important pillar of society that gives them confidence in a time like this to be together and taught by their teachers in familiar circumstances.
From Wednesday, parents who choose to withdraw their child will not be penalised, but need to follow strict social distancing rules.
If you take them out, then it is incumbent upon you to ensure that you know where your children are, what they are doing, that they are not mixing with groups, that they are not putting themselves at risk or others at risk.
But it's a plan that's facing mounting opposition.
Every hour we delay making a decision, we put lives at risk. We can see what's coming by looking at other countries. It is inevitable that schools will close in Tasmania. The government needs to support parents to plan for what is coming.
I'm hearing daily stories of students incredibly anxious for their friends in Year 12. Will they get an ATAR? How are they going to do their exams properly? That they're worried about whether to be at school or at home.
Children, in all the studies that have been looked at around the world of coronavirus infection so far, are not affected by coronavirus infection as often or as severely as adults.
The Premier promising if there is advice to close schools at a later date, he will do so.
Our term dates remain the same. We'll review our school situation after the Term 1 holidays and provide further advice then.
Further advice on childcare centres and TasTV is expected in coming days. Michael Breen, 7 Tasmania News.
Stay with us. Our special late bulletin continues after the break, including the latest facts and advice for beating coronavirus. Welcome back to our special late edition of Nightly News. Don't touch traffic light buttons. That's the latest corona advice. Angela Cox has been looking at what else to avoid according to the latest research.
Some of the world's top virus experts have worked out how long COVID-19 can survive outside the body. In the air, it's up to 3 hours. That's with the virus attached to airborne droplets like moisture from coughs and sneezes, even fog, dust or medical gases. They found on copper surfaces like drawer handles, the virus can last up to 4 hours. It can live on cardboard for up to 24 hours, but experts say packages or mail are unlikely to transmit COVID. The virus appears to last the longest on plastic and stainless steel, between 2 to 3 days. Non-porous surfaces seem to let the virus survive longer. So that means metal doorknobs, metal or plastic buttons, handrails, light switches, keyboards and desks. Experts say petrol pump triggers should now be used with gloves. One report found corona could survive on glass for up to 9 days, raising questions about mobile phones. Manufacturers say use disinfectant wipes. Do not use alcohol cleaners or bleach because it can cause damage. Concerns have also been raised about handling newspapers, cash and coins that might have come into contact with the virus. Low temperatures and high humidity help the virus survive longer. The best protection is to avoid touching your nose, eyes and mouth and wash your hands or use sanitizer frequently. When you sneeze or cough, do it into your arm, not your hand.
Certainly a lot to remember. Now, with thousands of Australians now jobless and Centrelink lines bigger than ever, the idea of coping with unemployment can be daunting. To help, we have spoken with financial hardship experts who've shared advice on how best to beat the downturn.
It was a sobering day for gym owner Josh Avison, left with no choice but to pack up, turn off the lights and shut the training ground indefinitely.
This morning our best advice for staff was literally cater for your clients as much as you can, but go get into the Centrelink line and see if you get accepted.
A line that was around the corner at nearly every branch, thousands becoming unemployed overnight.
If I get job seekers, I'll be able to live on that, the bare minimum.
To ease anxiety, financial hardship experts My Budget have this advice. They say the first thing to do is contact Centrelink and find out what payments you are eligible for. Then set up a budget, taking your new income and expenses into account. Lastly, cut back on any hidden expenses, such as magazine or gym subscriptions you no longer need.
There's a number of places where we're spending money we don't even realise it just comes out of our account every week or every month.
Financial experts also say that having a budget or plan physically written down can reduce anxiety and stress unemployment might be putting on your relationships.
By having that plan for your money, it actually means you've got a plan for your life.
In a world that seems so uncertain. Tristan Vorius, 7 News.
It's also a daunting time for many expectant parents bringing a child into this changing world. There are recommended changes for the care of pregnant women, but we're being told they're less likely to be severely affected.
After 2 miscarriages in recent years, Jessie Jordan is expecting a baby boy, but COVID-19 is dampening her excitement.
Just feeling really robbed of an experience that should be the best time of our lives.
The peak body for obstetricians is recommending hospitals make several changes to maternity care that could include reducing or postponing antenatal checkups or doing them over the phone, avoiding face-to-face pre-birth classes, limiting visitors to partners only while in hospital and earlier discharge.
There are strategies in place to make sure pregnant women do get good care.
Pregnant women are considered at higher risk of contracting coronavirus, but they're not expected to be severely unwell. There's no evidence suggesting an increased chance of miscarriage.
Lots of women have done this all through time and through wars, and they've gotten through it, and I'm sure we'll be able to get through it.
Jessica Ridley, 7 News.
Stay with us. Our late bulletin will continue after the break, and we'll bring in Tom Johnson to have a bit of a chat, and we'll have a look at the new measures at AFL headquarters. Welcome back to our special late edition of Nightly News. Well, we've all seen how the pandemic has shut down sport right over the globe. Now Australia is seeing the writing on the wall for the Olympic Games. Athletes are being told to prepare for a delay. Even though officials are holding out slim hope Tokyo will go ahead as planned. Now let's bring in reporter Tom Johnson. He's all over the sport at the moment. Tom, no real decision yet, but what does this mean for our athletes?
Well, in a nutshell, Murph, what this means is there is at least some certainty for those training. That's the important word here, certainty. They can now assume the Games will happen in 2021. What's changed is the IOC has, for the first time, conceded it may postpone the Games, but of course that's yet to actually happen. For the athletes, you can only imagine the frustration of not knowing if there will be a Tokyo Games in July, especially as the IOC seems to be swimming against the tide of world sport by sticking to its original plan. And when you look at history, there really is an enormity about all of this. Australia is one of only 5 countries to have competed at every Olympics since 1896. And all that history is on the line, Pete. Australia is banking on the IOC to make the call to postpone the Games.
Well, there's plenty of things to throw on the table for that, including all the testing that needs to be done of athletes and also the interrupted training regimes that they're all having to put up with. And we all know the footy season's been pushed back as well, Tom. We have new developments tonight from the players as well.
Yeah, we sure do, Murph. Players are now sharing the load. They've agreed to take a huge pay cut this evening. They've given the green light to cop a 50% cut to their salary until the end of May, and it'll be looked at again after that. And the bloodletting doesn't end there. We heard today the AFL boss, Gil McLachlan, and the executive team will take pay cuts of at least 20%. Just a skeleton staff is staying after the league stood down around 80% of its workforce. It's likely Tasmania will cop some pain as recruiters and talent managers are affected. Even the AFL Combine could go. So clubs are gradually going into lockdown. We saw Port Adelaide join that list today. It's really a seriously testing time for the game, Murph.
Yes, well, Hawthorn staff here in Tasmania are on a bit of a holiday as well, so there's plenty of more news to come from each and every club about how they're handling the situation, but many of them are laying off all their staff. Thanks for updating us on all that information on the sport, Tom. And of course, the A-League are also in a little bit of trouble. There's a game tonight, but it doesn't look like the rest of that season is going to continue. A decision on that tomorrow, maybe?
Yes, we'll see how it goes, hey?
Yeah. Thanks very much for joining us, Tom. And that's all the latest on the situation as it stands at the moment. Have a nice evening. Good night.